Okay, we're back to duties of the heart, and we are, excuse me, the throat is doing its thing. We are in volume two, if you're using this edition, either in the full size or the cute size, page 804, 805 in the second volume, and it is and there's a link to the Safari version in the chat. And Roxanne will be in and out. She promised she'll be poking in and out as things go. So we're on the subject of abstinence, of pre-shoot. And um, as I said before, pre-shoot doesn't exactly mean asceticism because you don't really have to be an ascetic to do it. But it means a kind of refraining from certain pleasures of the world, kind of distancing yourself, literally pre-shoot means to separate yourself. So separating yourself from a kind of material existence to a certain
Is it
extent.
like Gevura? Talking about Kabbalah?
What?
Is it like Gevura?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I guess it is sort of like a kind of Gevurdic discipline, kind of a kind of discipline. Um, And what I like the next piece because I like very much when we get a description of kind of like, so what does this look like? Because very often, especially when it comes to aesthetics, I don't have such a positive kind of, you know, um, when you hear the stories about the Perushim, so there were people in Lithuania who were known as the Perushim. And the Perushim used to walk around wearing blinders. They would wear horse blinders when they went and walked through the street to make sure that they didn't see anything they shouldn't see. And they were, they were um, notoriously, notoriously intolerant and angry. So very often ascetics are not, I don't think of ascetics necessarily as being the nicest folks. But this description of what this kind of ascetic would be, a holy ascetic would be, or a Perush, somebody who separates them from material life, is actually quite beautiful and something that I can definitely see striving for. So let's hear what it says. So the conditions of special absence are one of the are as one of the pious are put as has put it are as follows. It's interesting. He says as one of the pious. So that phrase usually means that he's quoting some Sufi source. So I don't know which one he's quoting, but usually when he says one of the pious, he doesn't specify, um, and he doesn't say our sages. Usually it means that he's talking about his Sufi source. So the absent individual is of cheerful countenance and troubled heart, which means that while on the inside, right, he has all sorts of stuff going on inside, right? He's not uh, he has um, literally, right? Even though he has all this trouble going on inside, it's not expressed outside. He treats other people with friendliness and kindness, even though he has a lot of storm going on inside. He is exceedingly magnanimous, and his soul must be humble. He neither bears a grudge, nor covets, nor slanders, nor gossips about anyone. So you have it really describes, so this is not just, a person, this is not just a person who's, right, you can't do this in a cave, right? So if this is not talking about the kind of ascetic who lives in a cave, spends 3 years, 3 years by themselves, or as the Tibetans do, 3 years, 3 months, and 33 days, um, maybe 3 hours, in the cave, but somebody who's living in the world, right, and who behaves kindly, behaves kindly to other people, uh, doesn't bear a grudge, doesn't slander people, doesn't gossip. He abhors prominence and hates lordship. Um, that that the person does they don't want attention for this, right? They don't want to be some guru. They don't want some people to give them honor for this. And it says literally moes uh moes hasrara. He says they hate literally the ability to boss other people around. Srara really means the ability to boss everything around. They're not interested in taking these kind of leadership roles. Um, he says they're they're miyushav, which means they're composed of mind. It's a hard word to translate. Yeshuvadat means to have a composed mind, to be calm, to be centered. Maybe that's the best word, right? They're kind of centered individuals. Um, Remembers and expresses gratitude, right? Remembers what the good things that people do for them and expresses gratitude. And he is most diffident and of little harm. A person who really is forgiving of the faults of other people and doesn't do harm to other people, doesn't hurt other people. If he laughs, it's not to excess. So, I mean, it doesn't mean he doesn't laugh, right? It's not right. There's no mitzvah there's no mitzvah or there's no chassidut, there's no piety in being humorless, right? There's no piety in being, a crab, to being a sourpuss, right? He laughs, but he doesn't laugh, in some sort of outrageous way. But it has a kind of, but in a controlled kind of appropriate way. Um, hmm. If he's angry, he is not enraged. If he's angry, he's not enraged, right? Of course, people get angry, right? He says, of course, people get angry. It's normal people get angry. It's that we're not saying the person can never get angry, right? That would be ridiculous, right? Of course, people get angry, but he doesn't get enraged. He doesn't let it get out of control, right? Anger is a normal part of human life, right? But rage is not necessarily, right? So the ability to kind of deal with your anger because he's miyushav, because he's calm and he's centered, right? Or she's calm and centered, really, because she's calm and centered, that she's able, especially in this crowd today, I think I'm the only male here, so because she's centered, right? She's able to control the anger. Um, Her laughter, I'm going to go for her now because situation says her laughter is only a smile. And when she asks a question, her purpose is to learn, which sounds, what do you mean? Question only to learn, right? Sometimes people ask you like gotcha questions. Right. That's if you were ever a high school teacher, you would know this, right? High school teachers do that all the time. They ask you a question, and it's a gotcha question because you're going to answer. They know how you're going to answer. They're going to go, "No, you got it wrong," and then they try to show how brilliant they are. Okay, that's not a good question. Or sometimes people innocently are asking questions that come from their own traumatic places, but aren't necessarily to get information. Comes from their own stuff, but not like guess information. But the person who's used to restraint, right? Who's used to this kind of restraint and separation from materiality, is going to be able to ask questions that are really meant to get answers, right? Really meant to get answers. Um, so her knowledge is vast, but humility is great, right? So even though the person may know a lot, may have a lot of wisdom and not a lot of knowledge, um, although my wife was telling me the other day, she says you have a lot of knowledge, but not a lot of wisdom, which it could be true. I have to think about that. Could be true. Says his resolution is firm, but he is not hasty or foolish in his actions. Um, So um, the person has a sense of purpose, right? The person has a sense of purpose, um, and maybe even ambition in a certain sense, but is not reckless about it. Right? Is not going to go steamrolling over other people to get what they want. They're not, they're not going to. Um, they're not going to be hasty or foolish, even though they may be enthusiastic and even though they have a strong sense of purpose. He argues courteously and responds respectfully, even on Facebook or Twitter. Okay, so that, yes, it says that right there. No, but he's the person is able to respond to people. This, of course, like more and more I see that really the test of a person's quality as a human being really comes out in moments of disagreement. Um, and we live in a time when there's a lot of disagreement and there's a lot of conflict, and that's when you see who is who, like how they behave when somebody is disagreeing with them. When everybody's agreeing with you, right? Everybody's an angel, right? Oh yes, 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 yes. Then it's great. But the moment somebody disagrees with you, especially if they disagree with you vehemently, or they don't behave so nice when they're disagreeing with you, right? Then your shadow comes out, and the little crocodile inside of you comes leaping forward and responds. So if you can control your crocodile inside, um, then maybe you could be one of these Perushim, one of these um, people who separate from materiality. Um, when angered, he is just. Now it's interesting because so you said before, when the person is angered, when a person is angered, they don't turn to rage. So that means that they kind of they have control on they have control on um, all the stuff that goes with anger. I think part of that has to do with, anger, of course, involves all sorts of physiological responses, neurochemicals, all this stuff that's going on in your body, and being able to monitor that can help you stop turning into rage. Here, the person becomes angry, and maybe even angry on principled grounds, but is nevertheless just. Because part of the problem is that when you become angry, right, the problem is angry people do really stupid and horrible, mean things, right? So a person who could be angry without person being angry without doing something which is unfair and mean because of their anger, right? So they can get angry because we already said that's a normal human thing, right? Everybody gets angry, okay? Everybody gets angry. Took me, and even me, especially me, I have a temper. Um, but people get angry, but they should be able not to do unjust things with their anger. Um, when and when entreated, they're responsive. Somebody asks you for something, they're responsive to what they ask you for. That means that you check your voicemail, you check your voicemail, and when people ask you for stuff, that you call them back. I fail in that all the time. Yes, Kaylin's hanging her head in shame. I can see it.
The
Right?
amount of bad is this juggling of charges I have. My goodness,
Yes, I know.
terrible.
I know. It's hard. His friendship is genuine. Um, his friendship is genuine. Um, okay, hold on. You do the tav zakah. Actually it's a nice word. Kind of like um, the word is genuine means like is is untainted. The friendship is untainted. That would be the better translation. It doesn't, there's no weird motivations in the friendship, right? The friendship is pure friendship. Zakah really means something which is crystal clear. It's crystal clear friendship. It's friendship with no weird, no other weird motivations. Okay, there's no ulterior motives. They're not trying to get anything, does not trying to get anything out of anybody, not trying to curry favor with anybody. Just friendship is really friendship. And his attachment is strong, his pledge is steadfast. Okay, so when this person is really when this person is really this person is well, this the attachment the person has to other people is real and strong and genuine, and when they promise something, you can trust it. It says he accepts the creator's judgment. He right accepts the creator's judgment. So, and this, of course, he talks about in many parts of this book, is that um, this is of course kind of a basic um, kind of a basic uh, kind of a basic concept in this book is to be accepting of what God rules for us. And since he rules over his passions, right? He says Moshe b'Yitro. He literally rules. He rules over the passions. So instead of the passions ruling over him and guiding him to or her to all sorts of behavior, he's able to keep control over those things and to rule over them. Uh, he does not speak harshly of one who does him an injury, right? So even though in the course of life, people sometimes do bad things to us, um, doesn't mean we have to speak badly about them. We can understand that people very often do things they do for all sorts of reasons, and there's no reason. It doesn't do any good to speak badly of them. Um, he does not occupy him. It says he does not occupy himself with what is not useful, which is exactly what the Hebrew says. I mean, like he doesn't bother. They don't bother themselves with things which are useless, which they know aren't going to go anywhere. Right? Very often, right? You have to make a judgment call, right? You look at something and say, well, is this something which is actually gonna is it gonna bring something good? Is it really gonna, pan out into something, or is it really not gonna pan out that something? Is it just kind of a waste of time? And so this person, chooses not to waste their time, right? Choose not to waste their time. He does not rejoice over the calamity of another person, speaks no evil of anyone, right? Not to what's that great word? Schadenfreude or whatever it is, right? Uh, the what is which is the joy of other people's pain,
Yeah, taking pleasure in other people's pain,
right?
schadenfreude, sure, yeah.
Yeah, taking pleasure in other people's. He doesn't take pleasure in other people's pain. Doesn't sort of look and say, that person, they got what they deserved, that kind of thing. Um, and And again, doesn't speak evil of another person. He doesn't impose upon others, but is a great help to them, right? Tries not to trouble others, tries not to make things life. Uh, you know, I, I'm looking forward to Kaylin's article when I'm finished here. Um, as a joke, yeah, I could see, but if you've ever done this. At the end of the day, just kind of take a look at your day and see how much of your day was wasted on things which are completely useless. I mean, it's always way too much. Um, and of course, you don't think about it at the time, right? It's just kind of what you're doing. But then you think, really, was that smart way to spend my poor limited little lifetime? Um, not always clear. Okay, so he he doesn't impose on other people, doesn't make them, but he tries to help people as much as possible. He expresses deep gratitude at a time of misfortune. So even when things are not going well, expresses gratitude for what they do have, right? To express gratitude for what you do have. That even if things are not going well, at least you have the ability to say they're not going well, right? You still have the ability of speech. You still have, you still have hopefully people to love you and support you. And so you have a lot to be grateful for. I'm personally, even in the lowest times of my life, I've had a lot to be grateful for. And so, um, this person is grateful even in rough times, and he endures patiently a time of ruin. That's quite that's quite a um hold on. Yeah. So even at a time when things are really bad, okay, even at a time when things are really bad, they are um they're patient. They have patience. If solicited, he gives, right? If somebody asks you for something, they give. My rabbi was like this. My rabbi gave to anybody who asked him. Now, it didn't, you never knew how much was going to be in his pocket or how much he was going to be able to give, but he would give to everybody. He literally gave to every single person who ever asked him. If defrauded, he forgives. Um, the, there's a story. There's a story about the Tosher Rebbe that people used to give him these beautiful clothes. They used to give, and he was a very, very simple man. He built a Hasidic community north of Montreal in a little French Canadian town. Um, and the only thing that he would accept from people that didn't go to tzedakah was clothing. Okay, anything else that people gave him, he gave away. But he agreed that if people gave him clothing, he wouldn't give it away. He was very, very difficult that way because people would give him money and he would just like give it to the next person. He just would give away money. It was a big problem. So somebody gave him this beautiful suit, right? It was with, a long coat and with a vest and a pair of pants. And he hung his jacket, his coat on a hook, and somebody stole it. And he um and and he comes back and he sees this missing and he starts to cry. And somebody says, Rabbi, why are you? He says, Rabbi, don't cry, don't cry. You have a lot of coats. He says, I'm not crying because of the coat. He said, what are you crying about? I'm saying, I'm crying that he didn't steal the pants too, because the coat's just not nice without the pants. you know? So a person at that level, right? Even if somebody defrauds or they steal from them, they have a sense of love. My former wife's grandfather was once robbed, was came into his house at the time that he was being robbed, and the guy the guy had taken the candlesticks and everything else, and he said to him, "You forgot the silverware." And the guy was so shocked. The guy was so shocked that he put everything down. And her grandfather ended up offering him a job, and he worked for him for like 30 years. So selling vegetables from their horse cart. So just goes to show. Okay, enough of the stories. He, uh, If solicited, he has provided forgives. Though he refused, he is generous. Okay, though he is refused, he is generous, right? So even if other people say no to him, he says yes, right? So it shouldn't be like he's trying to get back at anybody because they weren't generous with him. He's generous whether or not other people are generous with him. He says he is shunned, he remains affable. So even if people shun him, even if people treat him badly or with disrespect, nevertheless, he treats them with kindness. And then finally, this is just a a beautiful line. Um, he says, He's he's rach mechema matok midvash. He's softer than butter and sweeter than honey. Softer than butter, sweeter than honey. I think I want that on my gravestone. Of course, it wouldn't be true, but still, it would be very nice. He says, softer than butter, sweeter than honey. Um, so that's the kind of character that we're talking about. So he urges others to the truth and speaks the truth. He forgoes his desires and looks ahead to the day of his death. He keeps his word. So it's an interesting mixture of kind of what I would think of spiritual qualities, social qualities, personal qualities. Um, it's an interesting mixture of qualities of this person. So he is wise. He is vigorous. The word vigorous here is, I think, zaris. Let me look just to check. Yeah, zaris, which means not just vigorous, but like zaris means busy, enthusiastic, right? Not just a person that's uh, no, not margarine, not parquet, strictly butter, strict.
Beautiful, beautiful hip hop song from the early 90s.
Thank you, thank you, uh, thank you. Um, so. I'm not putting that on my I'm not putting that on my gravestone. Just
I will. I'll
okay.
put it on
Okay, you
mine.
putting it. No, not margarine, not parquet, strictly butter. Okay. So uh he's Zaris. The person is Zaris. The person is like enthusiastic, wants to get stuff done, which kind of compares with Chokhmah, right? With wisdom. Wisdom, right? A person could sort of sit with their wisdom, okay, here I am just sitting around being wise. I could just sit around and be wise all the time. But this is a person who also wants to put their wisdom, into action, not just to kind of sit down and be wise. A noble soul and pleasant towards others. Um, Let me just look at this for a second. Okay, Nafsho Yikara, a precious soul, and the Briot Noach, and pleasant to creatures, right? We actually had the same word, right? Creatures, um, in the Tuesday yesterday in Pirkei Avot, and it can mean people, but it also means like all creation. It could mean all creation. That, pleasant to all the creatures, all the things around him. Um, he says, let's see. I have to look at the Hebrew because it's Gibor Ba'aretz. He was a hero on earth. Okay, I like that. And Gibor, right? Somebody who's strong, right? Somebody who's strong. But I mean, a hero on earth. Um, so imagine that you can be a Gibor, right? A hero on earth who is soft as butter and sweet as honey, right? That's a nice combo, right? That's a very nice combo. Um, all this you could put on your dating profiles. Okay, this can all go on the apps. Okay, all this is what you're looking for. I'm looking for somebody who is a hero on earth, but soft as butter and sweet as honey, and see how that goes. Okay, Caitlin, think about that. Okay. Um, okay. Um, though he does okay, sorry. Um, He's a hero on earth and beyond all reproach, a help to the poor, salvation to the oppressed, right? I'm sorry Linda isn't here. Linda would appreciate that, right? That is, right, that person who's like takes a look at what's going on around him in the world, right? It's, is concerned about the poor and concerned about the oppressed, concerned about the most vulnerable people in the society around them. Not just living in some, spiritual, right? Because you might think a parush, a person who separates themselves from materiality, why should I care about poor? Why should I care about that? It's just their karma, man. and they have, it's not my fault they have bad karma. I'm going back into my cave and I'm going to meditate some more. But this is a person who is a gibor ba'aretz, is a person who's a hero on the earth, and there's zaris. They have energy, and they have energy, and enthusiasm, and they really care about the poor, and they care about the people who are oppressed. He does not uncover what is hidden or reveal a secret, right? It's a good quality in a person, not to not to tell people's secrets when they tell you. Though his troubles be many, his complaint is little. Um, this clearly was written by somebody who wasn't Jewish, had to be, since kvetching is like the 614th commandment is to complain. But it says, even though there are a lot of problems, they don't complain. If he sees something good, he calls attention to it. If he sees something evil, he covers it. This is a very interesting point. Some people think that if you see something bad, you have to call attention. You immediately have to call attention to it, right? This is in our culture now, we're into calling people out. That's a big deal, right? I'm going to call them out, right? That's a big thing. But that is actually not the teaching of the Torah. Um, and from my Muslim friends, they know that it's not certainly not the teaching of the Quran either. Um, that really, if somebody does something wrong, you don't embarrass them publicly. You don't call them out in public. If you want to help them out in private, you help them out in private. But you don't, and even for yourself, right? Even for yourself, if you've done something wrong, right? You don't walk up to the world. You don't go out to the world and go, "Hey, let me tell you about all the bad things I did," right? That's not your job, okay? If God had wanted to write all your sins, right, in a moving, in a moving screen across your forehead, right, so that everybody could see them, he would do that, but he didn't do that, right? He made them invisible. So if that's the case, if they're invisible, let them stay invisible, right? Don't call other people out. Don't call yourself out. Don't go revealing your sins to everybody in the world. But you cover them over. Okay? If you're going to deal with them in a quiet way. Um, he is esteemed and pure, intelligent and God-fearing. His company is a joy, and his absence a sorrow. Right? It's just uh, uh, a beautiful way to put it. Right? It's the kind of person. He's the kind of person that to be around them is really to be around them is something which is really beautiful, and to be away from them is something that can be very painful. Let me see here. Okay, one more minute. Wisdom has refined him. Humility has adorned him. Uh, that I love this again. Uh, I think it was Roxanne who liked this term, refining. This is the refining of like the refining of metal, right? When you take metal and you heat it up and you skim the dross right off the top and you purify the metal. That's the verb that's being used here. And he says that that's what wisdom is supposed to do to you, right? Wisdom is supposed to refine your character. It's supposed to make you more clear, more pure, um, and and uh, and and humility is a kind of something to make you that makes you beautiful. Um, Maskir maskil. He says he reminds the learned and teaches the ignorant, right? Of those people who are very learned, he might simply gently remind them of the truth. And for those people who don't know, right? He says then people who really don't know, then he teaches them. Uh, and any deed he deems nobler than his own deed, any other soul he regards as purer than his own soul. He knows his own faults and is mindful of his sins. He looks at other people and other people's actions and says things to himself, you know what, they're better than me, right? Which of course is the opposite of many of us, right? We look at ourselves, we think, oh, we're better than everybody else, right? And that's common. That's a common way of thinking. He says no, but the person who has refined themselves in this way, they look at other people and they assume they really must be better than me. And if they look at their actions, they look at their actions in a favorable way to say, oh, they're doing it in a way that's even better than that I might do it and thinks about their own faults and their own sins. He knows, we know, right? We know our own faults and own sins. We don't know anybody else's, right? So we can always assume that somebody else is doing things for much better reasons than we are because we know the weaknesses in our reasoning. We know the weaknesses in our own character. And then finally, he loves God and strives to do his will. He does not avenge himself or persist in his anger. So it's interesting, right? To pair those things that this is a person who loves God, and because he loves God, right? Because he loves God, doesn't avenge himself or persist in his anger, right? Um, that when you recognize that everything that happens to you really comes from God, right? You're not going to get angry at all the stuff that happens to you. You're not going to be, constantly enraged, but instead, be able to have a certain degree of equanimity. So I can stop there because we're at 146 and thoughts. Um, thoughts, objections, rights.
So the person on Earth though, like that, yes, that's a good kind of it's good that's good mitzvah, but is that frowned upon in some way? Like if you're not God, you might not be godly enough if you're just kind of doing the earthly duties or I got a little lost with that piece.
Which piece?
Well, just the piece of where just kind of not whatever phrasing it was, but martyr on earth or something
Not
who
Mark, hero, hero.
hero, not martyr. I that was the wrong word because I recognize why. However, the hero on earth, uh, but that's less holy. I didn't know if I
More.
no, it's more
Look,
holy.
look,
Okay.
the person, like you see, I think part of what he's trying to get at is that our normal thought, our thought about a person who is a parush, a person who like distance themselves from material life, like a monk, for example, right,
Hmm.
is going to be that that person, right, is completely unconcerned with the world, right? It's not going to be doing anything about the world.
Hmm.
But to say that a person is gibor ba'aretz, that a person is a hero, means that they're out there acting, right? So it's not just okay. I'm going to be wise and sit in my cave and I'm going to
There are no
meditate.
breatharians,
Right?
if you're familiar.
Right. They're not breatharians. They're people.
Because they caught that guy eating a 7-Eleven hot dog, just in some.
I,
Anyway,
am
I
I?
digress.
How surprised am I? Not at all. Malka, Malka,
Okay.
Malka.
I'm here, sorry. I
Okay.
couldn't figure
Yes.
out the buttons. So, see, when you said comments, I'm like, oh no, let me be nice. You said objections. I said, well, now he opened the floodgates. Now, because all this comparison stuff, it's one thing to be inspired and say, wow, this person, it has qualities that maybe I might want to prescribe to. But this this oh, this one's better than me, and oh, and then it's like, wow, how pious that they're saying, well, no, they're better than me instead of me better than them. It's
Mhm.
this comparison thing, and then I wonder why I'm in therapy for feeling not good enough.
Mhm.
Is I just I find it very difficult that you know I put people on pedestals all the time, and I think it's great to be humble and all these wonderful things. I guess Christians would say to be Christ-like, or whatever it is that you
Mhm.
are aspiring to be. But I wish there would be more of an acknowledgement of it's okay to be the way you are, and that you can learn from something without feeling like you're lesser than or more than, or it's like the Bible's just riddled with this favorite son, favorite this, better than that, and it's very hard for me. It's
Well, first of all, the favorite son thing, right? That never works out because that doesn't work out well. But so first of all, I want to acknowledge you asked a very really good question, and I was thinking about this a little bit as I was reading it. It says, well, it's very nice, to give me this description of this perfect person, right? But that's very nice. So first of all, I mean, is has such a person like this ever existed in the world? And if so, where are they? I'm not sure that I've ever really met one. So that's something to consider. And the other thing is, like, okay, very nice for you to tell me what I should be like, but you're not going to tell me how to get there, right? Now, arguably, right, the rest of this book is there to tell you how to get there. So he's giving you a kind of uh, giving you a kind of path at how to arrive at this, right, in the rest of the book. But standing on its own, the description is just like, okay, here's what a perfect person looks like. Well, okay, that's nice, right? But you know, uh, how do I get there, and what's the purpose of this except to make me feel, like completely, insufficient. Right? So I could compare myself to this. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm a big mess. Um, and although there is that one thing, that part about his looking at other people and sort of knowing your own faults. So that can that can work both ways, right? You can look at yourself and think, oh my God, I'm so horrible. I'm terrible. I am just the worst. And everybody else is better than me, right? I mean, there's that. And then there's also just simply being able to be honest about who you are and saying, you know, this is this is me and this is what I'm able to do. I'm other people may be able to do better than me, like in one of Rabbi Nachman's stories, I think I told before, there was a shoemaker, and he was a horrible shoemaker, right? He was a terrible, terrible shoemaker, and his wife, and he sold his shoes for like half the price of everybody else. And so his wife yells at him and says, "Dude, like, why is it that everybody else gets twice as much for their shoes?" And he says, "Well, because their shoes are better than mine." And he says, "But, well, what do you mean?" He says, my shoes, my shoes, maybe their shoes are better than mine, but my shoes are my shoes and they're so sweet." And he takes one of his shoes and he kisses it and he says, "This is my shoe. Okay. I get for whatever I get for it. I make a little bit of money. That's okay with me." Right? Eh, if we could take that attitude and say, okay, yeah, so I'm not perfect, but what I produce in the world is what I produce and it's mine. I don't know.
Yeah, that's much healthier
Yeah,
sounding.
it's much healthier
It's,
sounding than,
it feels like there's just this modest stuff where everyone is saying, "Oh, I'm humble, I'm humble,
yeah.
I'm dumb, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this," and kids take that to heart, where they say, "Well, if everyone else is putting themselves down, I guess I, and I feel like." if it's just for the sake of not being too big for your britches, I feel like there should be more explanations out there that, of being at peace with how you are instead of, I don't know.
So can I'm gonna end with the only Hasidic joke I think that I know of. I don't because Hasidim don't tell jokes. They tell stories, not jokes. The story, the joke is that there was a Hasidic community where everybody was very interested in self-nullification, right? And so they would pray and they would yell out to God, right? They stand in front of they go, God, I'm nothing, I'm nothing, I'm nothing, I'm nothing. And there was a janitor who worked in this synagogue, and he said to the Rosh Yeshiva, to the head of the said to the Rebbe, he said, "Listen, I've been working here for 30 years and I've never gotten to pray here. Can I please just lead the prayers once?" So he says, "Okay." So he goes and he goes in front of the teva, in front of the, the pulpit, and he yells, he says, "I'm nothing, I'm nothing, I'm nothing." And two of the guys, they poke each other and he says, "Ha, look who thinks he's nothing now." Okay. I wish everybody a beautiful, beautiful day.
I
Bezrat
just,
Hashem.
before we close, I just want
Yes,
to say something that popped into my head.
yes,
Humility is not thinking of yourself less, it's thinking less of yourself. No, it's not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less.
yes. Well,
So
well,
anyway,
Or it's best to stop thinking about yourself. It's like opening up the window to let air into a stuffy room.
yes,
That
okay.
kind of thing.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will leave with that. Okay.
Beautiful.
Okay.
I
Thank
have, I
you.
have to click the onion thing because I have to see it. Okay.
Very
I
good. Okay.
wish everybody a beautiful weekend. Shabbat Shalom. And Bezrat Hashem be back on Monday and all will be well. So bye.
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 Bye.